They may be different races, but kufr's face is always the same. So the houses that were abandoned, they weren't sold to them. They weren't given to them. Houses abandoned by Muslims fleeing that area under pain of death. They brought in settlers, who they call citizens or new people or homesteaders or pioneers. Immigrants, they call them. Populated these new areas, which did what? Bolstered the Catholic population. A number of decrees were brought into force. Number one, if anyone is doing any bathing or washing on Friday, he will be killed, as he is a crypto-Muslim. Number two, anyone staying back from mass services on Sundays and Wednesdays will be killed. And number three, all signs of Islam are to be obliterated. The most celebrated theme was when the conquistadores, soldiers, made it to the Tower of Alhambra and tossed the Qur'an out of the window to a jubilant crowd. So the very large mushaf, tossed it from that window down to a jubilant crowd who quickly tore it to pieces. This happened in different areas. You want to understand interfaith, what that means? This is the reality. Now, you should understand as well, if you want to really do in-depth research, I would advise you to contact your local library and to read up on the Spanish Inquisition if you want to do any really in-depth research. And if you find out how many Morisco, Mudajir, Moorish people were killed, well, you'll be surprised at the numbers. Are you aware that there is a holiday in Spain that celebrates the expulsion of the Moors? And they have to choose lots because no one wants to be the Moor. And the people who play the Moors put on blackface, artificially tan their skin, fatten their lips, put on clothing that is remarkably similar to my own, and they parade through the streets. The crescendo of this ceremony is where the heroes, dressed with robes with crosses on them, which looks familiar, almost exactly like the Ku Klux Klan robes that I saw in my youth, who used to burn our houses down. These heroes, these conquistadores, conquerors, the same ones who killed 100,000 Aztecs in one day. The high point of that ceremony is they slaughter all of the Moors, and those that are left are driven from the city. Do your research. You'll find it. It's still there. It's one of the most popular Spanish holidays. You try to actually stress this to a Spanish person, the wrong that exists in this. Similarly, the wrong of Thanksgiving, celebrating when some local natives in the Plymouth area helped some English settlers who couldn't feed themselves, and once they were well fed and able to care for themselves, the English settlers showed them the musket, took over, and now you celebrate this day. Look into this. See what would happen to you if you wanted to celebrate a 9/11 day, loving the towers, with pictures of the planes ramming into the towers and gathering together and passing out free biscuits and tea. A towering day in history, if you celebrated that day. My mom's taking me out of school. Why? Because it's 9/11 day. Got to go pray at the masjid. You see what would happen to you. But look at the flip side of this. This is a national holiday, so we can't, that's because they're religious and they're good. No, it's nothing to do with that. This is a secular holiday. So it even transcends some of the religious precepts that these people hold. And it's carried, that incident from 1492 all the way to now is still held in high regard by the people of the land that it occurred in. And this is the terrifying thing about it. Catholics also began to think about other issues facing them. The entire Eastern Bloc, from Lower Spain all the way to China, had Muslims manning the borders, merchant price stalls, and other economically lucrative positions. The Ottomans were now the dominant world force, so fighting at this point would not be possible. Christopher Columbus, or also known as Cristoforo Colombo, was sent out in 898 AH, which is on the Kafir calendar AD 1492. It's also the date that Spain fell, the day of the slaughter of the Muslims. Important date for Kafir history. 898 AH to search for the Indios people and an alternative route to India and China where they would not have to trade with Muslims. Why would you not want to trade with people who were different to you, whether you agree with their religion or not? What mentally drives someone racially or religiously to say, we as Muslims, we know that Judaism and Christianity are false, and Buddhism and the people that are engaging in all the terms of false idolatry, but that doesn't stop us from trading and buying and selling with them. What type of bigotry does that show for people who say, we actually don't want to trade with you, and we're going to risk sending people to the other side of the world in which some of us still believe it's flat and he might fall off the other side. We're going to send them out to try to find another location where we're going to find people where we don't have to trade with you because we don't want to trade with you. What type of sick mind is that? So in 898 AH, they're searching for the Indios people, which were a mythical godlike people they believed that were out there, that were the antecedents to the white race. And they would be these glorious, white-looking, blonde-haired, super, almost Nordic-looking people that they're looking for, that no one still has found. Hitler was looking for them. He failed to find them. He had black hair and brown eyes, but he was looking for them. Other people were looking for them. So he looked for the Indios people and an alternative route to India and China where they would not have to trade with Muslims. Columbus arrived in the Caribbean islands after hiring the help of Muslim sailors running from the persecution in Andalus. These were Moriscos, Mudajirs, hiding their religion. Now, obviously, if they're sailors and you're out there with them and you could die and they know the way and you don't, they sort of run the ship. Now, the fact that he actually used them to get out there means what? That they've already been out there. If they've already been out to Indios or the Caribbean island where he landed, that means if they've already been out there and came back, remember, these are the same people from the Brazil tribe who had been from the Brazil tribe and they'd made it to South America. And now Brazil holds the name of that tribe. Remember, it happened almost 1,000 years ago. We made it out there. So is it that hard to understand that we made it to the larger Antilles and to the islands in the Caribbean? Not at all. Not at all, because South America is only a stone's throw. So he gets out there with those Moriscos, and they make it to Hispaniola, or Haiti. Now, Columbus arrived there and was disgusted to have found that some of the Arawak and Qatar peoples had Muslims among them. So the whole point of what you were trying to escape, I want to go somewhere where there aren't any Muslims, where there are no brown people, where I will not have to look in the face of anyone that looks like them. And you get there and he's disgusted to find that some of the Arawak, some of the Qarib, some of the other people, they're Muslim. Not all of them, but some of them, and that's bad enough. They're there. So he returns with news, however, of the gold and riches in what they're calling the New World. Never mind that someone else lived out there. Because you've arrived there, now it's the New World. Like your house, it's a new house. I've arrived, never mind the fact that you're home. I'm there while you're not home. I found a new house. I've discovered your house. We'll worry about you later. Look at this furniture. Wow, and this refrigerator, what is that? Frigidaire? You see, it's this type of marauding mentality. It's the settler mentality that we're seeing in the news. Recognize it? It's there. So he goes back and explains to them the riches that they found in the New World. He was declared acting regent of the Spanish crown and returned in 900 AH, annihilating and enslaving most of the population. It is of note to mention that the Spanish Inquisition was now in full swing, most of those persecuted being Muslims. So now you have the Spanish Inquisition, the collapse of Andalus happening in one area, and the beginning of a campaign into Central America and what would later become the United States by Cristoforo Colombo or Christopher Columbus. So he sets foot on dry land. 1 year later, he comes back with an armada of 300 ships representing the crown, wipes out the people, takes the gold. But then they realize, we've killed everyone. We've got no slave labor. Now what are we going to do? That will then bring us into the huge, devastating ramifications of the Atlantic slave trade. But that will come next lesson, inshallah. Now, the Hanafi scholars began to organize in 899 AH at the newly named Ottoman capital of Istanbul, the former Constantinople. Remember the hadith in Sahih Muslim, a prophecy the Prophet ﷺ gave over 700 years before it happened, that Constantinople would be taken by the Muslims. That prophecy was fulfilled. So the prophecy in the Sahih of Imam Muslim, under the book of Signs of the Hour, under the chapter of the taking of Constantinople. It happened. There's another prophecy that mentions that it shall be occupied again. But at the time that it's reconquered, 6 months later, the Dajjal will appear out of that time, and after him, the Mahdi will appear. That hadith is in Sahih al-Jami'. It would be the first time after the capital of Istanbul was established, it would be the first time in over 500 years that the Hanafis would have investment from the government. They sought to organize districts that were mainly Hanafis, while the Hanbali judges, who were the chief executioners, doctors, and intelligentsia, were left in place. Some of the Ash'ari scholars were persecuted at times by these new-to-power, strident Maturidis, to the point that some of them had to leave the Ottoman domains. When the Ottomans came in, their game plan was very simple. They did not want to engage or get involved with anything that would pose difficulty to what they were bringing. They saw philosophy, or any of the things connected with philosophy, they saw them as things that might harm what they were trying to bring about. And so because of that, they were very harsh against the study of philosophy, because they said that the study of philosophy or speculative theology is a waste of time. What merits does it bring? Because the Ottomans were interested in one thing: building hospitals, madrasas. And their argument used to be to people who engaged in speculative theology is, okay, so how many hospitals have you built? How many schools have you built with your philosophy? That was their argument. Because the Ottomans were men that were about the business of Allah. Let's build a madrasa, let's build a hospital, let's build a place where people can live, let's build an inn, let's build a hostel. We don't care about what could be or what might be. We are totally interested in what we want to do and what will get done. And so they began building these huge masjids. And the masjids were so huge. I mean, still you look at the Sulaimaniyya, 7 concentric domes on this masjid, massive. Building masjids out of granite. Now think about this. You have Ottomans. We already know that these men are geniuses. They're building masjids out of granite. Some of us that know anything about geology know what that means. That means that they're using diamonds to cut the rocks, because that's the only thing you can cut granite with. So that means they're using diamond for industrial work to cut granite to make concentric domes and circles. If you look at how much design went into that, can you imagine what type of machinery they had? And supposedly we're in the medieval times. Remember, we've already got indoor flush toilets. We've already got street lights. We're not using chamber pots.